The coffee in the break room used to be Nespresso. We had the little metallic pods, color-coded by intensity, stacked in neat glass towers that caught the morning light filtering in from the ferocious Chicago skyline. It was a small thing, a $2 luxury that the old man, our founder, Mr. Henderson, insisted on. He used to say that if you're going to ask people to move millions of dollars before noon, the least you can do is caffeinate them with dignity. Now it was brown sludge in a generic glass carafe that smelled like burnt hazelnuts and despair. I stood there, watching the dark liquid drip slowly into my mug, realizing that the coffee was the perfect metaphor for what West Axis Consolidated had become in the last 6 months. Since Mr. Henderson retired to his vineyard in Napa, and the board brought in Jason, everything had shifted from substance to optics. Jason, he didn't want to be called Mr. Sterling. He insisted on Jason. He was 34, wore sneakers that cost more than my first car, and used words like disrupt, pivot, and lean agile as if they were punctuation marks. I'm Sharon. I've been here for 17 years. I started as a junior analyst when we were just a regional logistics firm, and I climbed, inch by bloody inch, to become the director of capital projects. I don't have an MBA from Wharton. I don't have a Twitter following. What I have is a memory like a steel trap and the personal cell phone numbers of every major commercial lender in the tri-state area. I built the financial bedrock of this company. I negotiated the revolving credit facilities that kept the lights on during the crash of '08. I structured the debt for the fleet expansion in 15. I am part of the drywall, but drywall isn't sexy. Drywall doesn't get venture capital excited. Sharon, Earth to Sharon. I turned to see Rick leaning against the doorframe, flashing that grin that was all teeth and ambition. Rick was my VP. Technically, he was my boss, though I had spent the last 5 years teaching him how to read a balance sheet without hyperventilating. When Jason took over, Rick had latched onto him like a barnacle on a hull. He traded in his Brooks Brothers suits for slim-fit blazers and started drinking green juice during meetings. Morning, Rick, I said, taking a sip of the terrible coffee. It tasted like battery acid. What's the crisis? No crisis, just vibes, he said, finger-gunning me. I physically suppressed the urge to throw my mug at him. Jason wants the Q3 projection deck scrubbed again. He thinks the risk assessment is too pessimistic, wants to show more blue sky potential for the board. It's not pessimistic, Rick. It's math, I said, keeping my voice level. We're leveraged at 4.5 times EBITDA. If interest rates tick up even a quarter point, that blue sky turns into a thunderstorm. We can't just delete liabilities to make the slide look pretty. Rick sighed, a dramatic exhalation that suggested dealing with reality was a burden he shouldn't have to bear. See, that's the legacy thinking Jason is talking about. We're not a logistics company anymore, Sharon. We're a tech-enabled logistics platform. The multiples are different. Just massage it, please, for the team. I don't massage numbers, Rick. I audit them. He stopped smiling. For a second, the mask slipped and I saw the annoyance underneath. Just get it done by the all-hands meeting this afternoon. Jason wants everyone aligned. He pushed off the doorframe and walked away, tapping furiously on his phone. I watched him go, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. It wasn't just the request to fudge the numbers. I was used to sales guys trying to inflate projections. It was the silence that was bothering me. For the last 3 weeks, the email traffic in my inbox had dropped by 40%. Meetings that used to require my signature were happening in breakout sessions that I wasn't invited to. The Strategic Planning Committee had been renamed the Growth Squad, and my calendar invite had mysteriously disappeared, replaced by a generic notification. I walked back to my office, one of the few actual offices left after Jason tore down the cubicles to create an open-concept collaboration zone that sounded like a cafeteria during a prison riot. I sat down and looked at my dual monitors. I pulled up the server logs. It was a habit of mine, a paranoia bred from years of handling sensitive escrow accounts. There it was. A folder created at 7 a.m. this morning on the shared drive, Confidential Restructured Draft V4. I tried to open it, access denied. You do not have permission to view this resource. I stared at the screen. I was the director of capital projects. There wasn't a single financial document in this company I shouldn't have access to. If they were restructuring and I was locked out, it meant one of two things. Either they were doing something illegal, or they were getting ready to fire me, or both. I sat back, the leather of my chair creaking. I looked at the photo on my desk. Me and Mr. Henderson shaking hands after the IPO. He looked so proud. I looked so young. Legacy thinking, Rick had said. I opened my drawer and pulled out a small red notebook. It was my backup brain. In it, I had written down the details of every covenant, every clause, and every handshake deal I had made over the last 2 decades. I flipped to the back, to a section titled 2021 Debt Consolidation First National Bank. My eyes scanned the lines I knew by heart, but I needed to see them written down to calm my racing heart. Clause 17B, Key Person Provision. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. They thought I was just an obstacle. They thought I was just a middle-aged woman with a spreadsheet habit who didn't understand the vision. They thought they could just delete me like a bad line of code. Speaking of code, if you're enjoying this descent into corporate madness, give me a solid and hit that subscribe button. It helps me keep the lights on and the coffee better than what I'm drinking right now. Anyway, back to the impending train wreck. I closed the notebook and locked it back in the drawer. The all-hands meeting was in 4 hours. Jason was going to stand up there and talk about the future. Rick was going to nod and clap like a trained seal. And they were going to look at me, sitting in the back, and think I was finished. I took another sip of the battery acid coffee. It still tasted terrible, but now it tasted a little bit like fuel. I opened my laptop and started typing an email. Not to Rick, not to Jason, but to Mark, the president of First National Bank. Subject, catching up. I didn't send it yet. I saved it to drafts. I needed to see how they played this. I needed to see the whites of their eyes. The office outside my glass wall buzzed with the frenetic energy of young people who didn't know that companies could die. They were talking about stock options and launch parties. They didn't hear the structural groaning of the hull. But I did. I had built the ship, after all, and if they wanted to throw the captain overboard, they were going to find out the hard way that I was the only one who knew how to steer. The town hall auditorium was freezing. It was another one of Jason's changes, keeping the ambient temperature at a brisk 68 degrees because he'd read a blog post somewhere that said colder temperatures increased cognitive synaptic firing. To me, it just felt like a morgue. I sat in the third row aisle seat. It was my spot. It had been my spot for 10 years of quarterly reviews. Around me, the new breed of West Axis employees were settling in, balancing their laptops on their knees, their faces illuminated by the blue light of Slack channels and Twitter feeds. There was a nervous energy in the air, the kind of electric static that precedes a thunderstorm or a mass layoff. The lights dimmed, and the bass-heavy intro music started thumping. It was radioactive by Imagine Dragons. Of course it was. Jason bounded onto the stage. He wasn't wearing a tie. He was wearing a t-shirt under a $2,000 blazer that said disrupt in binary code. He grabbed the microphone with two hands, leaning into it like a stand-up comic about to roast the front row. "How are we feeling, West Axis?" he shouted, a smattering of woos and applause. It wasn't the thunderous ovation Mr. Henderson used to get, the kind that came from genuine respect. This was the applause of people who were afraid of losing their vesting schedule. "We are at an inflection point," Jason began, pacing the stage. "For decades, this company has been a giant, a slow, lumbering, sleeping giant. We moved boxes. We signed papers. We did things the safe way." He made air quotes around the word safe like it was a slur. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. I knew where this was going. "But the world doesn't reward safe anymore," Jason continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The world rewards the bold, the agile. We need to shed the weight of the past. We need to trim the fat." On the giant screen behind him, a slide appeared. It showed a rocket ship taking off, shedding its booster stages. The boosters were labeled legacy systems, redundant processes, and I squinted to be sure traditional management. Rick was sitting in the front row, nodding so vigorously I thought he might give himself whiplash. He caught Jason's eye and gave a thumbs up. "I know change is hard," Jason said, walking to the edge of the stage. He stopped directly in front of me. He didn't look at the crowd anymore. He looked right at me. "Some of you have been here a long time. You've built comfortable little fiefdoms. You think you own your processes. You think the company can't survive without your rubber stamp." The room went quiet. The air grew heavy. Everyone knew who he was talking to. I was the Department of No. I was the one who killed the crypto payment initiative. I was the one who blocked the purchase of the luxury company jet because it violated our debt covenants. "But let me be clear," Jason said, a smirk playing on his lips. "Nobody is bigger than the vision. If you can't get on the rocket ship, you get left on the launch pad. Some of you need to remember your place. You are support staff. You are the plumbing. We are the architects." Rick let out a loud, sharp chuckle. It echoed in the silence. "Know your place," Jason repeated, softer this time but with more venom. I felt the blood rush to my ears, a hot, stinging wave. It wasn't the threat of firing that hurt. I had a golden parachute. I'd be fine. It was the dismissal, the plumbing. He was talking about the financial architecture that kept his paycheck from bouncing as if it were a clogged toilet he was too important to plunge. My face didn't move. I didn't frown. I didn't scowl. I practiced the stillness I had learned in 100 boardroom negotiations. I simply reached out, firmly grasped the lid of my laptop and closed it. Snap. The sound was small, but in the quiet room it sounded like a gunshot. Jason blinked, momentarily thrown off by the lack of submission. He turned back to the crowd, launching into a diatribe about vertical integration synergies. In my pocket, my phone buzzed, one long vibration, then another. I slipped it out, shielding the screen with my hand. It was a text message, not an email, a text. Sender, Mark, First National Personal Message. "Sharon, are you in the room with him?" My risk officer just flagged a drawdown request for $40M on the revolver. Signature looks creative. "Call me now." My heart stopped, then restarted with a slow, heavy thud. $40 million, the entire liquidity buffer, and creative signature? That meant they had tried to bypass me. Had tried to forge an approval or use an old authorization code. I looked up at the stage. Jason was gesturing wildly at a graph that went up and to the right, totally divorced from reality. He looked like a god. He felt like a winner. He had just publicly humiliated the only person in the room who could save him from federal prison or financial ruin. Know your place, I whispered to myself. I stood up. Jason stopped mid-sentence. Going somewhere, Sharon. We're just getting to the good part. Bathroom, I said clearly. My voice didn't shake, unless I need a permission slip for that too. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the room. Jason's jaw tightened. Don't take too long, you might miss the future. I wouldn't miss it for the world, I said. I walked up the aisle, my heels clicking rhythmically on the concrete floor. I didn't look back. I pushed through the heavy double doors into the hallway, the thumping bass of the presentation fading behind me. I looked at the phone again. Call me now. I walked to the floor-ceiling window overlooking the city. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of industrial cleaner and ozone. The anger was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I swiped right and pressed the call button. Good morning, Mark, I said. My voice was calm, contrasting sharply with the chaotic thumping of the bass that still bled through the auditorium doors. Sharon, Mark's voice was clipped, tight. I could hear the background noise of a trading floor or a busy bank office on his end. Mark wasn't a branch manager. He was the president of commercial lending for the entire Midwest region. We didn't talk about the weather. I have a drawdown request here initiated by a Jason Sterling. It's timestamped 10:45 a.m. It's asking to max out the credit facility for a quote-unquote strategic acquisition in the APAC region. I stared at the city below. The cars looked like toys. I'm not aware of any acquisition in APAC, Mark, and I certainly didn't authorize a $40 million wire. I know you didn't, Mark said, because the authorization code used was from an old protocol. It's technically valid in the system, but it hasn't been used since Mr. Henderson left. It triggered a level 3 compliance flag on our end. He's trying to bypass the counter-signature, I said, the realization settling on me like a heavy coat. He thinks because he's CEO, he has unilateral access to the debt facilities. Does he? Mark asked. The question was a test. He knew the answer. He just wanted to know if I was still the person he thought I was. No, I said firmly. Reference the 2021 Restructure Agreement, Section 4, Paragraph 2, and the side letter regarding the key person provision. I heard the typing of keys on his end. Pulling it up now? Yes, here it is. Drawdowns exceeding $5 million require the dual authorization of the CEO and the Director of Capital Projects, specifically Sharon Miller. And here's the kicker. Failure to maintain Sharon Miller in a key oversight role constitutes a technical default. A technical default, I repeated, tasting the words. For those who don't speak banker, a technical default is the financial equivalent of a nuclear launch. It doesn't mean you ran out of money. It means you broke the rules of the loan. And when you break the rules, the bank doesn't just get mad. They get everything. They can freeze accounts, demand immediate repayment of the entire principal, in our case, $150 million, and essentially seize the company's assets. Tried to remove you from the signatory list this morning, Mark said, his voice dropping an octave. We got a fax from your legal department, a request to update the authorized officer list. Your name was crossed out, replaced with Rick, what's his name? The one who looks like a game show host? Rick Stevens, right, Stevens. We rejected it pending your confirmation. I closed my eyes. They had really tried to do it. While I was sitting in that meeting, listening to Jason insult me, they had tried to erase me from the company's financial DNA. Mark, I said, leaning my forehead against the cool glass of the window. I need you to do me a favor. Do not process that wire. Obviously, Mark snorted. I'm not sending $40 million to a guy who wears hoodies to board meetings unless you tell me it's okay. And the signatory change? It's in the trash. As far as First National is concerned, we're the gatekeeper. That was the deal we made with Henderson. We bet on the jockey, not the horse. You're the jockey, Sharon. Thank you, Mark. Sharon, he paused. If he pushes this, if he tries to override the bank, he will, I said. He thinks banking is an app on his phone. He doesn't understand that relationships are legally binding. Then he's going to hit a wall. A very hard, very expensive wall. What do you want me to do? I looked at my reflection in the glass. I looked tired. I looked 45. I looked like plumbing. But plumbing is what holds the water. And without water you die. Hold the line, I said. He's going to call you. He's going to scream. He might threaten to move the business to Chase or Wells Fargo. Let him try, Mark laughed. With your leverage ratio, nobody touches this debt stack without your personal guarantee on the oversight. You're the only reason the covenants are waived. Exactly. So when he calls, don't answer, let him sweat. Let him think the system is broken. I need him to realize that his rocket ship doesn't have any fuel unless I sign the check. Understood. I'll put a temporary hold on the revolver. System maintenance or compliance review. Let's go with compliance review. It sounds scarier. Perfect. And Sharon, yeah, watch your back. If he's trying to move that kind of money this fast, he's desperate. Liquidity might be tighter than the public reports show. I know, I said, that's why I'm going back to my desk. I have some legacy systems to update. I hung up the phone. The silence in the hallway felt different now. It wasn't empty. It was pregnant with potential. Inside the auditorium, I could hear the muffled sound of applause. Jason must have just unveiled the new logo or something equally useless. I turned away from the meeting. I walked toward the elevators. I wasn't going back to the auditorium. I was going to my office. I had work to do. If Jason wanted to play games with the company's lifeblood, I was going to show him what happens when you cut an artery. The office floor was deserted. Everyone was still in the town hall, drinking the Kool-Aid. The silence was absolute, save for the hum of the HVAC and the distant wail of a siren 3 blocks over. It was the perfect atmosphere for an execution. I sat down at my desk and woke up my computer. The screens glowed to life, 2 monolithic eyes staring back at me. I cracked my knuckles, a cliché, I know, but satisfying nonetheless, and logged into the backend of our ERP system. Most people think the CEO has the master key to a company. They imagine a golden password that unlocks every door. In reality, modern corporate governance is a web of permissions, roles, and segregation of duties. Jason had the title, but I had the admin rights to the finance module because I had set it up 10 years ago when we migrated from legacy servers. I navigated to user management roles executive leadership. There was Jason's profile. Permissions, full read/write, level 5 approval authority, and there was Rick's. Permissions, read/write, level 4 approval authority. I didn't delete them. That would be sabotage, and I wasn't going to give them grounds to sue me for destruction of data. I simply enforced the rules. I clicked on Global Settings Compliance Protocols. I checked a box labeled Enforce Strict Segregation of Duties, SOX 404. Then I went to the Treasury Management module. This was the interface that talked to the banks. It was the bridge. I found the pending transaction queue. There it was, the phantom request for $40 million, sitting in a pending bank acknowledgement state. I opened the audit trail for the request. It showed the user J. Sterling had initiated it and R. Stevens had approved it 1 minute later. Dual approval, technically correct, except for one thing. I opened the approval hierarchies table. I found the rule for capital expenditures $5M. I added a new condition, requires approval group, director cap proj. Then, I went back to the specific bank interface account settings. I changed the security protocol from standard to enhanced verification. This meant that any outgoing wire over $10,000 would now require a physical hardware token, a little RSA dongle that generated a 6-digit code every 60 seconds. I had the only active dongle in my top drawer. Jason had lost his weak one. Rick never picked his up from IT. I sat back and watched the screen. The system refreshed. The little green light next to the bank link flickered and turned amber. Status, verification required. Somewhere in the cloud, the digital handshake between West Axis and First National was suddenly demanding a secret password that only I knew. I wasn't done. I opened my email and drafted a message to the general counsel, Sarah. Sarah was a good lawyer, but she was terrified of Jason. She bent with the wind. I needed to stiffen her spine. 2. Sarah Jenkins, General Counsel, CC. External Audit Partners, Board Risk Committee, Subject, Urgent. Compliance Alert, Unauthorized Debt Restructure Attempt, Sarah. I have detected an attempt to draw down the entirety of our revolving credit facility, $40M, this morning without the requisite covenant certification or the signature of the designated guarantor, myself, as required by our 2021 Master Credit Agreement. Per our fiduciary duties, I have placed a temporary compliance hold on all Treasury functions to prevent a technical default. Please advise the board that any alteration to the signatory list without bank consent triggers immediate repayment clauses. Regards, Sharon. I hovered the mouse over the send button. Copying the external audit partners was the nuclear option. Once the auditors knew, couldn't be buried, it had to be investigated. It became a material event. I looked at the clock. 11:45 a.m. The town hall would be ending in 15 minutes. They would be walking out high on adrenaline, ready to spend that $40 million. I clicked send. The whoosh sound of the email leaving my outbox felt like the sound of a guillotine blade dropping. Almost immediately, my instant messenger popped up. It was Bob from IT. Bob IT, hey Sharon. Getting weird alerts from the Treasury server. Says token mismatch for the CEO's account. Did you change something? I typed back, just running a routine security patch, Bob. Tell him to restart his system if he complains. It usually takes 24 hours to propagate. Bob IT, lol okay, will do, THX. I leaned back in my chair. The trap was set. The water was cut off. Now, all I had to do was wait for the house to catch fire. 30 minutes later, the executive floor was buzzing again. The growth squad was gathering in the main boardroom, the one with the imported Italian marble table, and the view that cost $10,000 a month in rent. I wasn't invited, of course, but the boardroom had glass walls, and sound travels surprisingly well through the vents if you know which chair to sit in nearby. I sat in the breakout area just outside, ostensibly reviewing a stack of invoices, but my ears were tuned to the frequency of disaster. I could see them. Jason was pacing, still high on his own supply from the speech. Rick was setting up his laptop, projecting a slide deck titled Project Velocity, a pack expansion. The board's finance subcommittee was there, Three serious-looking men in gray suits who had flown in for the occasion. They were the money men. They didn't care about disruption. They cared about ROI. Gentlemen, I heard Jason say, his voice muffled but audible. What you saw downstairs was the vision. What Rick is about to show you is the fuel. We are ready to pull the trigger on the acquisition of Thai Logistics in Singapore. The LOI is signed. The funding is secured. One of the board members, Mr. Sterling, no relation to Jason, ironically, this was old money Sterling, leaned forward. Secured? That's a $40 million cash outlay, Jason. Our last liquidity report showed $6 million on hand. That's legacy accounting, Jason scoffed, waving a hand. We've leveraged the revolver. The capital is sitting in our operating account as we speak. We moved it this morning to demonstrate speed of execution. I turned a page of my invoice stack without reading it. Here we go. Rick clicked the next slide. It showed a screenshot of a bank balance, $46 million. As you can see, Rick said, pointing a laser pointer at the screen, we are liquid and ready to strike. Refresh the page, Mr. Sterling said. He was old school. He didn't trust screenshots. Rick smiled, that oily, confident smile, of course. He tabbed over to the live banking browser window projected on the screen. He hit F5. The little spinning wheel appeared. It spun and spun and spun. Then the screen flashed red. Error 403, authorization failure, token required, balance unavailable. Rick frowned, Wi-Fi must be spotty. 1 second. He tried again. Error 403, compliance lock engaged. Contact administrator S. Miller. The room went deadly silent. The name S. Miller was projected in bold, red letters 10 feet high behind Rick's head. Jason stopped pacing. He stared at the screen. Rick, what is that? I don't know it's saying. It's asking for Sharon's token. Bypass it, Jason snapped. Use the admin override. I am using it. It's not working. Rick's voice pitched up, cracking slightly. Mr. Sterling put his glasses on. Why does it say compliance lock? Jason, did you clear this drawdown with the compliance officer? I am the CEO. Jason slammed his hand on the table. I am compliance. That's not how banking covenants work, Mr. Sterling said coldly. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling the bank. I saw Jason's face drain of color. He lunged for his own phone. He dialed furiously. I knew exactly who he was calling. My desk phone rang. I let it ring. 1, 2, 3. In the boardroom, Jason was staring at his phone, then looking out through the glass walls. He spotted me. I was sitting calmly, a highlighter in my hand marking a line on an invoice. I didn't look up. I let the phone ring until it went to voicemail. Then Jason's cell phone rang. He answered it, looking relieved. Mark, finally. Listen, your system is glitching. We're in a board meeting, and he stopped. He listened. I watched his posture collapse. It was subtle, but I saw it. The shoulders slumped. The chin dropped. Mark was giving him the speech, the technical default speech. Jason looked at the board members. He looked at Rick. Then slowly he turned his head and looked through the glass wall directly at me. I looked up. I locked eyes with him. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just stared blankly, like a piece of plumbing that had suddenly decided to stop flowing. Mr. Sterling stood up in the boardroom. Jason, if we don't have the liquidity, this presentation is fraud. We need to adjourn now. No, wait, it's a clerical error. Jason pleaded, following them as they started packing their briefcases. Sharon just needs to click a button. It's just a button. Then go get her to click it, Mr. Sterling said, buttoning his jacket, or we have a very different conversation. Jason stormed out of the boardroom. He was coming for me. Before Jason could reach my desk, my email chimed with a priority notification. It was a personal address I recognized instantly, hhenderson@gmail.com. The subject line was just a winking emoji. I opened it quickly. Sharon, Mark at First National, called me, said there was some excitement with the accounts today. He told me you handled it. Good girl. I'm starting a new venture next month. Boutique investment firm for sustainable infrastructure. Small team, good coffee. No growth squads, I need a CFO. Salary is double what you're making, and you get equity. Let them burn, Sharon, then come home. A lump formed in my throat. For 6 months I had felt obsolete, dinosaur, legacy. But the man who built this place knew exactly what I was worth. I wasn't just plumbing, I was the foundation. Sharon, Jason was standing at my desk. He was breathless. His hair was slightly mussed. Disruptor facade was cracking, revealing the panicked child underneath. What did you do? He hissed, leaning over my partition. What the hell did you do to the accounts? I slowly capped my highlighter. I didn't do anything, Jason. I just ensured we remained compliant with our contractual obligations. You locked me out. I have board members walking out the door. Fix it, unlock the funds. Now, I can't do that, I said calmly. Don't give me that, you have the token. Rick said you have the token? I do, I said. But per the credit agreement, which I'm sure you've read, I cannot authorize a drawdown of that magnitude without a certified board resolution approving the specific acquisition, an updated solvency opinion from an external auditor, and a written affirmation that the debt-to-equity ratio will remain below 3.0 post-transaction. I picked up a piece of paper. According to the slide Rick was showing, this acquisition pushes leverage to 5.2. If I sign that wire, I am committing bank fraud, and so are you. I don't care about the ratios, Jason shouted. People were staring now. The open plan office had gone silent. I am the CEO, I am giving you a direct order, And I am the director of capital projects acting as the fiduciary guarantor for the lender, I said, my voice rising just enough to carry across the room. My duty is to the solvency of the company, not your ego. I will not sign an illegal wire. Is that clear? Rick came running up, panting. Jason, Mr. Sterling is on the phone with the chairman. They're calling an emergency session. Jason looked at Rick, then back at me. His eyes were wild. You're fired, he spat. You are fired. Pack your shit and get out. Rick, call IT, revoke her access. You can fire me, I said, standing up. But that doesn't change the bank's signature card. In fact, if you fire me, Clause 17B triggers immediately. The loan becomes due in full within 24 hours. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled all day. So go ahead, Jason, fire me, make my day. You'll be bankrupt by lunchtime tomorrow. Jason froze. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He looked at Rick for help. Rick looked at his shoes. She's right, Jason, the key person clause. We missed it in the review. You missed it, Jason whispered. You told me the legacy contracts were boilerplate. I thought they were. Rick squeaked. I picked up my purse. I'm going to take an early lunch, I said. I suggest you use the time to figure out how you're going to explain to the board why you tried to execute a hostile takeover of your own balance sheet. I walked past them. I didn't look back. I could feel their eyes on me. I could feel the eyes of the entire office on me. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. The doors opened. I stepped in. As the doors closed, I saw Jason standing there, paralyzed, a captain who had just realized his ship was made of paper. I didn't actually go to lunch. I went to the coffee shop across the street, a real one with baristas who knew how to pull a shot, and sat by the window watching the West Axis building. My phone blew up. 7 missed calls from Sarah, general counsel. 3 from Rick. 0 from Jason. 1 email from the chairman of the board, explicit and terrifyingly brief. Subject: emergency session 2:00 p.m. to Jason Sterling, board of directors, CC, Sharon Miller, review of covenant status. Attendance mandatory. At 1:45 p.m., I walked back into the lobby. The security guard, Mike, who had been there as long as I had, gave me a nod. They're running around like headless chickens upstairs, Sharon. What did you do? Just cleared a clog in the plumbing, Mike, I said. When I reached the executive floor, the atmosphere had shifted from panic to funeral. The growth squad was nowhere to be seen. The assistants were whispering. I walked straight to the boardroom. The door was open. The entire board was there, some in person, some on giant screens via Zoom. Jason was sitting at the head of the table, looking like a schoolboy called to the principal's office. Rick was sitting in the corner, trying to make himself invisible. When I walked in, the conversation stopped. Miss Miller, the chairman said. He was a stern man who had built his fortune in steel. He didn't like tech bros. Thank you for joining us. Please take a seat. He gestured to the chair opposite Jason. I sat down. I placed my red notebook on the table. We have received a formal notice from First National Bank, the chairman said, holding up a piece of paper. It states that an irregular transaction was attempted today, and that as a result, the bank has placed a freeze on all credit lines pending a full audit of our governance controls. He looked at Jason. Jason tells us this is a misunderstanding, a glitch caused by your refusal to update a password. Jason glared at me. She hijacked the system. She's disgruntled because she wasn't included in the strategic planning. Is that true, Miss Miller? The chairman asked. I didn't answer immediately. I opened my notebook. I smoothed the page. Mr. Chairman, I said, this morning I detected an attempt to transfer $40 million, our entire operating cushion, to an offshore holding company for an acquisition that has not been vetted by legal or finance. The authorization code used was obsolete. The signature was digital, not physical. And the leverage impact would have breached our Series B covenants instantly. I slid a folder across the table. I had printed the logs before I left. Here is the audit trail, I said. It shows Jason initiating the wire and Rick approving it, a direct violation of the segregation of duties policy required by the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The chairman picked up the folder. He flipped through it. The room was silent, so I continued. I didn't hijack the system. I stopped the CEO from committing a federal crime. Jason stood up. This is insubordination. I am trying to grow this company. You're just a glorified accountant. Sit down, Jason, Mr. Sterling, the board member snapped. Jason stayed standing for a second, then sank back into his chair. Miss Miller, the chairman said, looking at me with a new expression. Respect, fear? Maybe both, if we lift the freeze. Will the bank work with us? That depends, I said. On what? On who makes the call. The board asked for a 10-minute recess to confer privately. That meant they were calling the lawyers to see how much it would cost to fire Jason versus keeping him. We were left in the room. Me, Jason, and Rick. The silence was heavy, thick with the smell of sweat and expensive cologne. Jason spun his chair around to face me. His face was blotchy. The cool, detached visionary was gone. You enjoyed this, he whispered. You planned this. You waited until the exact moment to humiliate me. I didn't plan anything, Jason, I said, checking my watch. You tried to rob the bank. I just turned on the alarm. I was going to fix it, he hissed. Once the acquisition went through, the revenue would have covered the debt. We would have refinanced in Q4. It was a bridge. It wasn't a bridge, I said. It was a gamble. With other people's money. You don't get it, he shook his head, looking at me with genuine pity mixed with hatred. You're obsessed with the rules. You don't understand how the real world works. You have to break things to build things. I built this company, I said, my voice dropping to a low, hard tone. Mr. Henderson and I built it. We built it on trust. We built it on paying people back. You think breaking things is a strategy? Breaking things is just breaking things. Rick stood up. Jason, maybe we should. Shut up, Rick. Jason screamed. He threw a pen against the wall. It shattered. He turned back to me. I can still fix this. I can talk to the chairman, but I need you to back me up. Tell them it was a system error. Tell them we discussed it. If you do that, I'll double your salary. I'll give you stock. I looked at him. He was bargaining. It was pathetic. I don't want your stock, Jason. It's inflated paper. Then what do you want? He pleaded. You want my job. You want to be CFO? Take it. Just unlock the account. I don't want your job, I said. The door opened. The board members filed back in. They looked grim. The chairman sat down. He didn't look at Jason. He looked at me. Miss Miller, he said, we have spoken to the bank. They are refusing to release the funds or lift the covenant freeze until they receive a verbal confirmation of stability from the designated guarantor. He paused. They won't talk to Jason. They won't talk to me. They asked for you. Jason looked at me. His eyes were wide, pleading. He knew his fate was entirely in my hands. If I said the company was unstable, the loans would be called and he would be the CEO who crashed the company in 6 months. I stood up. I can make the call, I said. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I placed it on the marble table, right in the center between me and Jason. I put it on speaker. I dialed Mark. It rang once. This is Mark, Mark, it's Sharon, I said. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the hard drive in the Polycom system. Sharon, Mark's voice filled the room. I've got your general counsel on the other line hyperventilating. What is the status? I looked at Jason. He was holding his breath. The status is? Corrected, I said. The unauthorized transaction has been canceled. The internal controls held. Okay, Mark said, and the leadership. Do I still have my key person in place? I looked at the chairman. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. For the moment, I said, but Mark, we're going to need to update the signatory list immediately. Jason let out a breath, thinking he was safe. Okay, Mark said. Who needs to be added? I looked Jason dead in the eye. Nobody needs to be added, I said, but someone needs to be removed. Jason's smile vanished. The bank president will be expecting a call from you. I said to Jason, my voice echoing the prompt's prophecy. Now, but I was talking into the phone. Mark, I'm handing the phone to the chairman. He has an update regarding the CEO position. Understood, Mark said. I'll wait. I slid the phone toward the chairman. Jason stood up. Sharon, you can't sit down, son, the chairman barked. You're done. Jason slumped back, defeated. The rocket ship had exploded on the pad. I picked up my notebook. I picked up my purse. Where are you going? Rick asked, his voice trembling. He knew he was next. I'm going to finish my lunch, I said, and then I'm going to draft my resignation letter. Resignation? The chairman looked up, alarmed. Sharon, wait, we need you. If you leave the covenant requires a competent CFO, I said. I'll stay for 2 weeks to transition the accounts. I won't let the company fail. I care about the people here too much. But I'm not working for this board anymore. I looked at the screen at the slide of the rocket ship still projected on the wall. You wanted to trim the fat, I said to the room. I'm just helping you out. I turned and walked out of the boardroom. I walked past the glass walls, past the open plan desks, past the terrible coffee machine. I walked out of the building and into the bright Chicago sunlight. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Henderson. Coffee is warm. Desk is ready. Come on home. I typed back on my way. I hailed a cab. As I got in, I looked back at the West Axis Tower. I imagined Jason upstairs, trying to explain to a banker why he wasn't allowed to touch the money anymore. Know your place, he had said. I smiled, watching the building fade into the distance. I knew my place. It was wherever the hell I wanted it to be. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit him.